أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في السور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا والشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقا قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم سورة مبارك الفاتحة.
As your near the overcrowded Haram of Imam Hussein, as you near the overcrowded Haram of Imam Hussein, send a prayer towards the lonely Haram of Imam Hassan. Send a prayer towards the lonely Haram of Imam Hassan. Even in death you are detained, although you left you still remained. In our hearts we wrote Hassan, beside Qasim and Hussein. Your seed is in a land that is devoid of water. He seeks promise on Uncle, allow me to enter. Ya Hassan, Imam Hussein is torn. Does he send to death his youngest born? Qasim answered, Uncle, do you see? To me death is sweeter than honey. As you near the overcrowded haram of Imam Hussein, as you near the overcrowded haram of Imam Hussein, send the prayer towards the lonely haram of Imam Hassan. Send a prayer towards the lonely haram of Imam Hassan. Hassan, your lovers have a dream for you and so Mulbani to build a shrine on your graves, to walk on your Arba'een. A dome is the hope for who it is seeking shelter. You answered Hussein's cries when he called for a helper. Abul Fadl sheltered the river. Qasim gave a part of his liver. When the forces often the way out, they do fall their swords, saying never. As you near the overcrowded haram of Imam Hussein, as you near the overcrowded haram of Imam Hussein, send the prayer towards the lonely haram of Imam Hassan. Send the prayer towards the lonely haram of Imam Hassan. How can the pen describe the light? You are the moon of every night. Without a dome, the All Might, to Lord glorified your sight. Oh, he who resides in the city of Medina, you are the Kaaba for the hearts of the believers. The arrows upon your coffin rained. Come and see what happened on the plains. No coffin and thirsty for 3 days, while the horses rained upon Hussein. As you near the overcrowded haram of Imam Hussein, as you near the overcrowded haram of Imam Hussein, send the prayer towards the lonely haram of Imam Hassan. Send the prayer towards the lonely haram of Imam Hassan. Salawat.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. I mean, inshallah, we have 4 minutes to Salah time. If we can use this time to prepare for Salah, ahsant.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. صلوات.
استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه من كل ذنب. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وفرجنا بهم يا كريم. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة ورضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك
بي وأتوب إليه من كل ذنب. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى. ارحم من رأس ماله الرجا وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم يا عالما لا يعلم. صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله ولا تفعل بي ما أنا أهله بجاه محمد وآله المعصومين. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على
على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم إنه ليس العلم بموضع رزقي وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي فأجول في طلبه البلدان فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران لا أدري في سهل هو أم في جبل أم في عرض أم في سماء أم في بر أم في بحر وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك اللهم فصل على محمد وآله واجعل يا رب رزقك لي واسعا ومطلبه سهلا وما أخذه قريبا ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا فإنك غني عن عذابي وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك فصل على محمد وآله وجد على عبدك بفضلك إنك ذو فضل عظيم وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Mu'mineen, kindly take your seats, inshallah. We are starting the program in 1 minute. Hassan. About 30. Bar Muhammadin wa Ali Muhammad salawat. Mu'mineen, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Kindly join me in reciting a Surah Fatiha for the donors of tonight's Tabarruk and Kul Marhumin Al-Fatiha. The Al-Qisa sisters would like to welcome all sisters to their next online study circle to be held over Zoom this Tuesday, the 13th of August at 9 to 9:45 p.m. UK time. Sister Masuma by Hassan will enlighten the sisters on the topic of Nahjul Balagha. Zoom login details have been circulated via the Jamaat's broadcast channels. An announcement on behalf of the Arba'een Medical Appeal Team. Dear brothers and sisters, as we approach the sacred time of Arba'een, we are reminded of the immense devotion and sacrifice of the Zawars who journey to the holy land of Karbala. Since 2017, our dedicated team has been providing vital medical care to these devoted pilgrims through our annual medical camp. This medical camp offers comprehensive healthcare services, essential medications, and the support of qualified medical staff to ensure the well-being of thousands of Zawar. However, we cannot continue this crucial work without your support. We are calling on our community to help us in this noble cause. Your generous donations will directly fund medical supplies and services for the pilgrims. Every contribution, no matter the size, makes a significant difference. You can find payment details on the posters displayed. Please take a moment to look at them and consider making a donation. Together, we can ensure that thousands of pilgrims receive the medical care that they urgently need during their spiritual journey. Thank you for your support and generosity. Should you require any further information, please do not hesitate to contact Brother Muhammad Hassan Banji. Jazakallahu khairan. There will be a children's Azadari program organized by the Al-Mahdi Madrasa to be held here at the center on Sunday, the 25th of August at 11:15 a.m. Children of all ages are invited to attend and participate. Parents are requested to encourage their children to attend and take part by reciting Marsiya, Noha, short majalis, poems, PowerPoint presentations, and so on. If you would like to participate, kindly contact our resident alim by emailing him on residentarlim@almahdi.org.uk with your child's details, what they would like to recite, and an approximate duration of their recitation. The deadline to register for this is Friday, the 16th of August. We will inshallah be holding a program here at the center on Thursday, the 15th of August, that's this Thursday, to commemorate the Shahadat Eve of Bibi Sakina alayhi salam and the 30th of Shuhada Karbala. The program will begin at 8 p.m. with recitation of Dua Kumail, followed by Maghribain Salah at 8:34 p.m. The rest of the program will then promptly resume at 9 p.m. Majlis will inshallah be recited by Mullah Mujahid Sharif. I would like to urge everyone to please turn up on time, which allows our parking volunteers to complete their duties and come inside on time for the program. Thank you in advance for your cooperation and punctuality. For tonight's Majlis, we are delighted to host Shaykh Fazle Abbas Kanji. Shaykh Fazle Abbas Kanji is currently studying at the Islamic Seminary of Qum, completing his master's program in Islamic jurisprudence and philosophy. Prior to his Hausa studies, he attained a master's degree in information systems engineering from Imperial College, London, and qualified as a project manager. Thereafter, he spent a year learning Arabic at the University of Damascus before joining the Hausa in Qum in 2013. His primary interest, alongside his Hausa studies, is in understanding and building a relationship with the Holy Quran. He teaches a number of classes online, as well as the Hausa, to try and bring the Holy Quran closer to the community. Shaykh Fazle Abbas, we are honored that you have accepted our invitation to grace our beloved center. Mu'mineen, kindly join me in welcoming him to the minbar with the recitation of 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah.
سورة المباركة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الأول قبل الإنشاء والإحياء والآخر بعد فناء الأشياء، العليم الذي لا ينسى من ذكره ولا ينقص من شكره، ولا يخيب من دعاه ولا يقطع رجاء من رجاه. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: إن الشيطان لكم عدو فاتخذوه عدوا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. We begin by offering our condolences to the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Zaman, and all the mu'mineen around the world as we commemorate the Shahadat anniversary of our second Imam, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, in these days that are leading up to the Arba'een of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It's an honor to be amongst you this evening. Before I introduce the topic for tonight, I want to take you back to the 26th of Rajab 60 AH. This was the eve when the governor of Medina, Walid bin Utbah, has summoned Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The news has now reached the people that Muawiyah has died and Yazid has been appointed by him as the next Khalifa. The governor of Medina is calling on Imam Hussein alayhi salam to take his bay'ah. And as we know, there is a little encounter between the two. And Marwan bin Hakam is there as well. But there is a unique line that Imam Hussein gives to us in his conversation with Walid that night. And it is unique because we do not see any of the other Imams speaking in the same way that Imam Hussein does. After explaining to the governor that Yazid is a drinker of alcohol, he is a womanizer, he kills innocent people, he transgresses the limitations of Allah, he says to him, وَمِثْلِ لَا يُبَايَعْ مِثْلَهُ. Somebody like me does not do or give allegiance to somebody like him. Then the next day, when Marwan meets him, he tries to convince the Imam again to give the bay'ah to Yazid. And he says to him, it's going to be good for your dunya as well as your akhirah. And there again, Imam Hussein alayhi salam says something unique. He says, وَعَلَى الْإِسْلَامِ السَّلَامِ. If the ummah is going to have somebody like Yazid leading this ummah, then Islam is going to be finished. Now we don't see the previous Imam speaking in the same way. If we go back to Saqifa, for example, Imam Ali alayhi salam is very clear in the fact that his rights were usurped and the pain that he went through. We can see this in Nahjul Balagha. But when somebody like Abu Sufyan comes to him and says, let us rise up and get your rights back, Imam sees right through him. And he realizes that the true character of Abu Sufyan is such that he also wants to put an end to Islam. In the case of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, not rising up will put an end to Islam, whereas in the case of Imam Ali alayhi salam, rising up will put an end to Islam. When it comes to Imam Hassan alayhi salam, we see that even he is very tactical. Imam Hassan alayhi salam does not engage in a military way with Muawiyah immediately. Rather, he begins by writing letters to Muawiyah. Why is this? We see once again the Imam has the basira, he has the insight to recognize who he is facing. Muawiyah is not like Yazid where he is an open sinner. Rather, he claims to be somebody worthy of the Khilafah. He portrays himself as a rightful person. And so the Imam needs to expose this to the people. And the letters that he writes to Muawiyah exposes him slowly and surely until the peace treaty is signed, and we see that Muawiyah, he puts it under his feet and breaks all the conditions of the treaty, and the true nature of Muawiyah is seen. What we realize is that the Imams were very aware of the forces against them. Even though their outer actions may have been very different, but their goal was one and the same. And what we can derive as a lesson from this is that it is very important for each and every one of us to recognize what are the forces that are against us. We all realize that we have been created for a purpose. We are on a journey towards Allah. Before every one of our actions, we say, qurbatan ilallah. We do things for the sake of Allah. But this is not just a journey that we can put on autopilot or cruise control and we can just end up at the destination. There are obstacles, not just obstacles, but there are active forces against us. And this is something that we have to also come to terms with. So, if we were to ask who is or what is the biggest enemy or the biggest force that is actually against us, if we look around us, especially in today's time, when we see what is happening in Palestine, when we see the different riots that are taking place in our own country, we will be tempted to think that the biggest enemy that we have, the biggest force that is against us, is an external force. However, when we look at the words of none other than Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, he says to us, أَعْدَى عَدُوِّكْ نَفْسُكَ الَّتِي بَيْنَ جَنْبَيْكَ. Your biggest enemy is your nafs, your soul which is between your two sides. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ has expressed this on many occasions, one of them being the expedition that the army went on in the lifetime of the Holy Prophet. When they are coming back after having toiled and been ready to sacrifice their lives, what more can they sacrifice other than their lives? The Prophet is standing there congratulating them and saying, Marhaban bikum. Congratulations to those who have completed the Jihadul Asghar. But there still remains on them the Jihadul Akbar, the greater jihad. The people are astonished. What more could we have gone through? And they ask Rasulullah, what is this Jihadul Akbar? And the Prophet replies that it is al-jihadun nafs. Jihadun nafs being the struggle against one's own soul. The question is, what is this soul? And why is it that we are being warned so much against this soul? If we were supposed to have control over our souls, then first we have to recognize our own selves. We see in many places in the Quran, for example, that the success is being attributed to people who have control over their souls. We have this famous phrase that we are all aware of, مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ. Two interpretations of that, but both leading to the same thing. That if I recognize who I am, then I will recognize my Lord, or that is the way that I will have recognized my Lord. And so this recognition of the soul is very, very important as we go through this journey of life. So what does the soul have? What does the soul consist of? If we are to control the soul and combat this nafs, we have to recognize the faculties of the soul. And those who have studied ilmun nafs, they tell us, the ulama, that we actually have a number of faculties within the soul. The primary ones are all battling against each other. We are told that we have what is called the shahwa, the base desires. And this is the attractive force. The force that is pulling us towards different things, especially in this worldly realm. And so, for example, we realize that this nafs, this shahwa that it contains, there must be a reason why it has been placed in us. Otherwise it would not be there. Allah in His wisdom has given us this attractive force in order for us to continue our survival in this world. Were it not for this shahwa, we would not have any sort of inclination towards food and drink. procreation, or any of the other things that are required for our survival over here. But then we see on the other side there is another faculty, and that is the faculty called the faculty of ghadab, meaning anger. And this, the ulama tell us, is that repelling force. This is the force that comes into play when you need to push something away. Sometimes it is something physical, a physical harm that is coming towards me, and I need to repel it. And that kicks in so that I am on fear or flight mode, they say. But what we have alongside these two is the one that's supposed to be in control. And that is the faculty of the aql. We may ask, what is the aql? Loosely in English, we translate it as intellect, right? Today, in today's society, everybody's asking for the intellectual answers, aren't they? But when we look at the hadith, it tells you exactly what the intellect is. Not only that, but if we keep the English to a side for the moment and look at the word aql and where it comes from, it actually describes the role of the aql amongst all the other faculties. Because the word aqila, which is the root of the word aql, comes from this idea of tying. In the olden days, it would have been tying the camel, tying the horse. Once the rider gets off his mount, he ties the camel. What is the purpose of tying the camel? The same purpose as locking our cars today. But you see the example of the camel and the horse is slightly more accurate. Because when you tie the camel, now it's not like the camel can't move. The animal can still move. Say I've tied it around a tree, it has still got the ability to move around the tree. But it prevents it from running away. It's got a limited radius now in which it can move around. And this is exactly describing to us what the aql's role is. The aql is there to make sure that the other faculties are in balance, that the other faculties do not run away, they do not fall into the other extremes. What are these other extremes? Simple example, if we look at the faculty of ghadab, we see one of the properties of the faculty of ghadab is this idea of bravery. It is a trait that we are recommended to adopt, and we see it amongst the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. But the fine line of where that bravery should be is determined by the aql. Sometimes we see that repelling force goes to one extreme over another. If it goes to the very low extreme, where the ghadab is not active at all, you see that the person becomes a coward. He doesn't have the valor and the bravery and the shuja'ah that is required in order to oppose any harm. But on the other side, we see that if the ghadab takes over and it runs away, it now adopts a sense of foolhardiness. It puts you into danger when you don't even need to be there. It makes you want to fight when there is no reason to fight. So those are the two extremes. But when the aql is there, it brings the two extremes back into the center, and we see a sense of harmony. And so the role of aql is to make sure that we have this harmony between the faculties. Now there are many different traits that we have in akhlaq that we are being told to adopt. And if we want to understand this balance that we are supposed to have and the different ways in which we can get out of balance, there are many books out there which delve into this. One of them that you might have heard of in English, it is called The Collector of Felicities. I believe there is a summarized version in English. The original is Jamaat Sa'adat, and that has been summarized by another scholar which is called Mi'raj al-Sa'ada, again summarized by Shaykh Abbas al-Qummi. He has a book called Al-Alamat, Al-Maqamat Al-Aliyah, the lofty stations. It's not yet published into English, but I'm told that inshallah very soon it's going to be coming out into English, where Shaykh Abbas, he summarizes what are the different traits we can have that are associated with each of these faculties, or a combination of them, and how they can go into the different extremes. And what we realize is that it is because of these faculties that we as insan are given this karama by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. because we are told that we can go higher than the angels, but we can also fall lower than the animals. Why? Because if you look at the angels have the aql, but they do not have this shahwa, the base desires. They do not have the anger that is pulling them away. And so they only act according to the aql. On the other hand, we have the animals. They only act according to the ghadab and their shahwa. And they do not have aql. But we as human beings have been granted all three. And the reason why we can go to the two extremes and surpass the angels is because if we are able to use our aql despite the different forces that are pulling us or pushing us into different directions, then we can rise higher than the angels. On the other hand, we have no excuse for using our ghadab and our shahwa alone, because this is the status of the animals. The animals don't have aql. On the Day of Judgment, we will be asked, where was your aql? Why is it that you were not able to use your aql and keep yourself in balance? And so just like we have a balance in our daily routines, in our external lifestyle, we also have to make sure that there is a balance in our internal lifestyle, so that this enemy that is there within, the force that is there within, is kept in balance and in harmony, so that it does not take us away from the path that we are moving on. What happens now when the aql is not in charge? When the aql is become a prisoner of the other two faculties, we are told in the Quran, إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. It starts commanding us towards performing these evil deeds. We know of the different levels of the nafs. We've heard of these. Nafs al-ammara, nafs al-lawwama, nafs al-mutma'inna. Nafs al-ammara is coming from this. That as soon as the aql is taken as a prisoner, now it starts pushing us towards performing the evil deeds. Where have we seen somebody overcome this commanding of evil in history? None other than Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Please recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam Ali alayhi salam, true, he is the peak of eloquence, but we see that his words are not just words. He embodies everything that he says in his actions. In one of the hadith that we have from him, he says to us, أشجع الناس من غلب الجهل بالعلم وقابل الغضب بالحلم. The bravest of people is the one who combats his ignorance with knowledge, and he is able to overpower his anger with tolerance. And in action we see this on the day of Khandaq, when Amr bin Abdawid has crossed over the trench and the battle is about to take place in Medina, and Amr bin Abdawid challenges the Muslims and he asks them, who is going to face me one to one? And none of the companions of the Holy Prophet are able to put their hands up except Ali alayhi salam. And he puts his hand up 3 times and he goes for the challenge. After a short battle, we see that Imam Ali alayhi salam is standing over the body of Amr, about to finish him off. But suddenly he is seen walking away. Why? The companions ask him. You were about to finish him off. The Imam says that at that point, Amr spat in my face. And I wanted to make sure that the strike that finishes him off is not due to my anger, but rather it is for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I walked away to make sure that I come back with that renewed fervor to finish him off for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the nafs at one stage starts commanding us to do evil. But that's the easy part. It doesn't sound easy, but that's the easy part. But the nafs doesn't stop there. What happens when we give in to that nafsul ammara? Sometimes we find ourselves that we have given in to the nafs and we have performed an evil deed. But instead of repenting, instead of quickly making a U-turn, now the nafs adopts a certain other state, and that is called a nafs al-musawwila. What is a nafs al-musawwila? This is the state of the nafs where it starts justifying everything. It starts saying to us that that which you did, not only was it not wrong, but it was the right thing to do. Have we not found ourselves in a position where sometimes we have ended up lying? And instead of seeking forgiveness straight away, the nafs comes in because of that ego and it says, no, you had to make that lie. Otherwise, something even worse would have happened. When we end up backbiting, sometimes we end up backbiting and the nafs is coming up with a justification even beforehand. It is saying to us, no. We say to our friends, don't we? I'm not backbiting, but... And then we end up backbiting. And there are many other examples where the nafs comes in. Sometimes I realize that I've been on my phone for the last 2 hours just checking emails. Emails are a thing of the past, right? WhatsApp and Instagram. And before I know it, 2 hours have just vanished from my day. But rather than making amends, the nafs is going to say, oh, but you know, the 253 groups that you're part of, there could have been something really important in one of them. You had to make sure that you spend all 2 hours going through that. What about the students amongst us? Sometimes we have a late night knowing that we have an early class in the morning, right? And it ends up that we can't wake up in the morning. Maybe we can translate this for Salatul Fajr as well. But it ends up that we struggle to wake up. The alarm goes off and I am so tired. What do I do to myself? I justify it. I say, look, I'm going to have to skip this first class. I skipped the first class with this justification. That had I gone, I would have been so tired I wouldn't have understood anything anyway. So it was better that I just sleep in. The parents amongst us. Sometimes we justify our actions when it comes to our own children. I've had a hard day at work. I'm very tired. It wasn't easy. Everyone was going against what I was trying to do. I come home and suddenly I'm lashing out at my son for something very small. Something that he didn't even have the awareness of. And then the nafs comes in and starts justifying. If I'm not going to discipline him, then who is? I am the father. But what's worse sometimes is the other side. When we go into the habit of unparenting, okay? So fathers, don't ever use babysitting. That's not a vocabulary that your wife wants to hear. You are parenting, not babysitting. But sometimes we end up unparenting. I have long hours of work. I have ibadah. I have to volunteer in the community. What my child is doing at home, what he is reading, what he is watching, I have no idea. But the nafs is justifying it. Where he is going out, who her friend circle is, all of these things, I have no idea. This is what we call unparenting. The nafs is constantly trying to justify this. But it is difficult. We have to make sure that just like we have the internal balance, we have to have the external balance too. And make sure the right amount of time is being spent in the right places. So that was just the first force. What about the next force? What else is an active enemy, an active force against us? In the verse that I read at the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling us, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ فَاتَّخِذُوهُ عَدُوًّا. Verily, the shaitan is an enemy for you, so take him as an enemy. What does that mean, take him as an enemy? Unfortunately, because we are engulfed in this material climate, everything that we see is pulling us towards the material. And it's gone to such an extent that anything that is non-material, we find it very difficult to find reality behind it. When the Quran, for example, talks about magic, when the Quran talks about miracles, yes, we have an acceptance of it to a certain extent, but we're constantly trying to find the reasoning. You know, exactly how did the river or the sea part for Musa? What was the scientific explanation? We're constantly trying to go back to the material realm. When Allah is telling us that we have an active force against us, the shaitan is there. He says to us, إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ هُوَ وَقَبِيلُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُمْ. He is able to see you, him and his whole tribe, his whole army, from a place that you cannot see him. You cannot see them. We know that shaitan is there, but to what extent do our lifestyles reflect the fact that there is this active force trying to pull us away from that right path. When we think of the shaitan, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? What's the first thing that comes to our minds? Shaitan, we say the devil, right? We probably think of the Man United emblem of this red guy with three-pronged fork, right? This is the devil. And this is what happens. Unfortunately, society is not helping us in what we see every day in movies, in animations, in our video games. And we tend to see shaitan just like we see a ghost. That there is this devil, there is this fictitious thing. And on the one hand, we're battling to understand that yes, he is there. On the other hand, everything is pulling us away to think of him as something real. And this is what we call desensitization. It happens every day. We open the news channel and we see a violent crime taking place. But just a few minutes before, I was watching a movie with that same crime taking place. And now when I see it on the news, it's not something horrific for me anymore. I have become desensitized. Even natural disasters, if you're to see some of the movies that, show you these magnificent scenes of natural disasters, and suddenly it's happening somewhere really in the world, you're kind of thinking, no, it's happened before. It's not something new. It's not shocking for me anymore. Shaitan is just like that for us. Because of what we are exposed to, because of being engulfed in this material realm, we don't see shaitan as real. And Allah is constantly telling us that we need to see shaitan as real. And this is why even the Prophet ﷺ is being told to seek protection from the shaitan. He's told, وَقُلْ رَبِّ أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ هَمَزَاتِ الشَّيَاطِينَ. And say, my Lord, I seek your protection from the insinuation of these shaitan. But guess what? Shaitan is not limited to just the non-material shaitan that we think of in the form of a jinn, who was Iblis and his enemy. In another verse of the Quran, Allah tells us, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا شَيَاطِينَ الْإِنسِ وَالْجِنِّ. And like that, we made for every prophet an enemy from the shayateen. And see which one is used first. He says, al-ins wal-jinn. From the human being and the jinn. So shaitan is a title that is given not just to Iblis, but to anybody who adopts his role. What happens when we fall into the traps of shaitan? We start taking on his role. And this is what we know as the awliya of shaitan. Because shaitan is not going to leave anyone. Shaitan is going to make sure that when he grabs hold of you, if you become part of his awliya, now you are going to take on that role and do what he has been trying to do. I'll quote for you a very scary section of Nahjul Balagha, just for your reference, and we'll move on from there. In the 7th khutbah, Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam says about this group of people, they have taken shaitan as the controller for their affairs, and he has in turn adopted them as his partners. He has laid eggs and hatched them in their chests, and crawled into their laps until he saw through their eyes and spoke through their tongues. Thus does he lead them to commit errors, and glamorizes their own foolish deeds to them, speaking lies through his tongue. So this is something that we need to be aware of. So who are these shayateen al-ins? Well, we know them from the past. We can name Nimrud, we can name Fir'aun, we can name Muawiyah, we can name Yazid. But the question is, who are the Muawiyahs and the Namruds and the Fir'auns and the Yazids of today? Who is it that, like Yazid, are the ones who openly violate not just the Islamic principles, but the principles of humanity with these plastic words of reform and independence? It is up to us not to become naive and assume that everybody is good. No, there are active forces against us. There are active people who are followers of shaitan and have adopted the role of shaitan over here. Who are the Muawiyahs of today? Who was Muawiyah? Muawiyah's tactics were that he was the controller of the media. He controlled the media, meaning that he was the one that controlled what everybody heard and everybody saw. We have to ask ourselves that who are the Muawiyahs of today? We see, for example, he was able to even fool the people of Sham into thinking that the likes of Imam Hassan alayhi salam is an evil man. We know that story of the Shami who came to meet the Imam, and he starts insulting him, only to see the good akhlaq of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, which transforms that man and makes him realize. But he was one man. What about the other thousands who Muawiyah had control over? And this isn't something that just started in the time of Muawiyah. We see this in the time of Fir'aun as well. If you think about the Bani Israel, when Prophet Musa alayhi salam is going to Fir'aun, he only has one request. He's saying, give the Bani Israel to me so that I can take them away from this land. But look at Fir'aun. Fir'aun, when he speaks to his own people, he points to Musa alayhi salam and says, this man, he wants to remove you from your own lands. Musa had no such claim, but the people heard nothing else. The media was in the control of Fir'aun, and this was the only voice that they could hear. Today, we need to be careful ourselves for what we watch and what we listen to, but also for our children. There's a famous statement that has been made that Hollywood is not just entertainment. Hollywood is education. What our children are exposed to is forming them before they become adults. I'll quote to you Walt Disney's own statement to show that this is not just a theory. Walt Disney says, I think of a child's mind as a blank book. During the first years of his life, much will be written on the pages. The quality of that writing will affect his life profoundly. And so we cannot be naive and just allow our children to watch whatever they want. We also cannot be naive and just see the problem that is the current problem right now. Today, yes, we have the problem of all of those letters that are piling up one by one. But that is just the face of it. There are so many things beyond there. Just because we are safe from our children being exposed to these certain number of things in our schools and from TV, we cannot assume that there is nothing else influencing them. If you look at the kind of concepts that are coming out more and more in the movies and the animations and the games of today, we see, for example, the concept of bad akhlaq. The person who becomes the superhero is the one who has the worst of akhlaq. And suddenly they do one thing right and they've become the hero of the people. If we haven't experienced it ourselves, think of it in terms of your child. Was there not a time when, for example, I spoke to my mother or my father in a way that I wouldn't normally have spoken to them? Something came out of my mouth which normally wouldn't have come out. Trace it back. Where's the origin of that? Maybe it was my child. He says something to me that normally he doesn't say. If we trace it back, it may come to the friend circle that he is with or something that he has seen. And we need to be aware of this. Does this mean now that we shouldn't be watching any movies? We shouldn't be watching any TV? Well, that's not what we are saying. But we have to be aware. If we want to watch movies, if we want to let our children watch things, there are ways to go about it. Some of the things that we can do are, for example, watch them together. Find the censored versions of those movies to start with. But when those scenes come up where there is bad akhlaq, when the enemy is being portrayed in a certain way, when in actual fact we do not believe that this is something that the enemy has, then we should be able to analyze it with them and try and make them realize that, did you see how this person spoke to this person? Did you see how he reacted to his father? Did you see how they're portraying the role of the father in this family? These are things we can actively analyze with our children so they get their entertainment, true, but they're also learning not to be caught. But today we also have many alternatives. There are many, many things there which we can watch now which have very good moral concepts there, and inshallah we can share these another time. So in order to finish, what we have realized is that there are active forces against us, and they start internally. It starts with the nafs, and then we have the shaitan, both in the form of the jinn as well as the human being. What we need to do before we leave today is, inshallah, figure out a way of how we can combat each of these three. So just a few points before we finish today with regards to how we resist. The general concept that we want to portray today is that we need to understand the strategies of each of these. We have to try and work out, how does the soul and the nafs work against us? How does shaitan work against us? How do the shayateen al-ins also work against us, so that we are able to understand their strategies? When it comes to the nafs, we are told by the ulama of akhlaq that there are two things that we can do on a daily basis to make sure that we are in control of our nafs. And that is the muraqaba and the muhasaba. Again, we don't have time to go into the details of this. We will simply quote one hadith of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam. But if we want to find out more, please recite the salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There is a collection of 40 hadith that Imam Khomeini, may Allah bless his soul, has put together with an explanation of each of these 40. The first of these is Jihadun Nafs, where he mentions the details of this muraqaba and muhasaba. Just in a nutshell, what is muraqaba? Muraqaba is the idea of watching over ourselves. Every morning when I wake up, I have a commitment to Allah that I'm going to spend my day in your way. And then during the day, I make sure that I am watching over everything that I speak, everything that I do, to make sure that it is in line with what Allah wants. At the end of the day, I do a hisab. Muhasaba comes from a hisab, where I take an account of myself. I see, what is it that I have done today? If I have performed something good, I thank Allah for it, and I ask Him for the strength of giving me the tawfiq of doing it again the next day. If I have performed something bad, at least I feel some remorse. If we don't do muhasaba, there is no way of removing that evil trait. Yes, it may take a week, it may take a month, it may take a year. I may be in a habit which is very difficult to remove. But if on a daily basis I am taking account of myself and having that sense of remorse, that remorse inshallah will be enough as a means for Allah to remove that from my heart. Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, he says to us, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَمْ يُحَاسِبْ نَفْسَهُ فِي كُلِّ يَوْمٍ. He is not from amongst us who doesn't account for himself every single day. What about shaitan? Shaitan's job is just waswas. الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ. That waswas that he puts into us, that's not in our control. The waswas is something that may come into my mind, my heart, without me realizing. What is in my control is how long I keep it. Typically we think of waswas as what? We think of waswas as this idea of, always being in doubt about something being najis or tahir. Always being doubt about whether I pronounce something properly. The ulama tell us, no, waswas is greater than that. These are just the small versions of waswas. The real waswas is anything that comes into my heart and I start entertaining it. That is a waswas. And so when shaitan puts something into my heart, I need to be aware. Through this muraqabah, I can throw it out. It's like that first glance. When I've had that first glance of something haram, maybe it wasn't in my control. But for me to continue is in my control. We need to act with shaitan like this. The ways to combat shaitan are very simple, but we have to be disciplined about them. For example, reading the Quran every day. True, there are some aspects of the Quran which we need to be taught. We need to make sure that we seek the advice of the experts for. But there are many, many messages in the Quran that are there for every one of us. Simple messages. When the tide is so much against us out there today, we need these simple messages every day. We need to be reading the Quran frequently and picking up on these small messages to keep telling us that shaitan is real, to keep telling us that there is a nafs which is working against us. And so this frequency of the Quran, that is why it's called the dhikr. One of the names of the Quran is a dhikr, a reminder. I know we come to the Majlis these days, we watch the videos these days of those things that we haven't seen before, we haven't heard before. I want something new. But we don't ask for a new Quran. Why? Because those messages are relevant. We need to get into a habit where we are not bored with the things that we've heard. Rather, we are trying harder and harder to keep implementing them, inshallah. Finally, when it comes to the people, again, we cannot be naive. We have to accept that everybody is not good. There is an active force against us. Recognize their strategies. Be careful of what we expose ourselves and our children to. And most importantly, we increase our knowledge of Islam. Today, the Shayateen al-Ins, what they are doing is that they are presenting Islam to us in their own way. They are presenting to the Muslims what Islam is supposed to be according to them. But what we need to make sure is that we are getting our Islam from the correct sources. And maybe it's a bit of a reality check. Maybe we can go back tonight and just reflect ourselves and see how much of the Islam that I am practicing have I got from the actual sources and the reliable sources, and how much of it is just a norm that has been fed to me because I am living in a certain environment, in a certain country, I'm exposed to certain media, etc., etc. I'll leave you with a quote of Bibi Fatima alayha salam. Please recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We know that she is the first shaheed after the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. She just lived for 3 months after the Prophet. But she has been quoted of saying that just within this short period of time, Islam has gone so far off the right tracks. Can you imagine 1400 years later how far Islam that we believe in could have gone with this long period of time? We're here to remember the musibah of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Imam Hassan alayhi salam also faced different types of enemies, different types of forces. For him, it was also the case that it wasn't just an external enemy, but there was an internal enemy too. Unlike a lot of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, whenever times got tough, they would find comfort and solace amongst their own companions. But Imam Hassan alayhi salam was one of those who could not even do that. It was his own companions that were calling him names, Ya Mudhill al-Mu'mineen. The amount of treachery that Imam Hassan had to go through maybe is unmatched in history. When we think of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, we think of him as the one who had that pure akhlaq. We think of him as the one who signed that peace treaty, but have we ever thought of him as the one who was a military commander who knew his enemy? It's worth looking into the history to say, despite having all these skills, why was it that he was forced to sign this peace treaty? What were the circumstances that were surrounding him? What did his own companions do to him that he ended up with such a fate? Despite having 20,000 soldiers to combat Muawiyah, we see that he is left all alone. He sends 12,000 soldiers up north, to the north of Iraq, to face Muawiyah. But 8,000 of them switch sides together with his commander, Ubaydullah ibn Abbas. The few who are left with him, as they are camping in the barracks over there, Muawiyah sends a delegation of 3 men. As they are approaching the Imam's army, we see that already there are rumors. The spies have already infiltrated the Imam's army and they are scaremongering and trying to make those who are with the Imam switch sides. There is a lot of fear amongst the companions of the Imam. These 3 people come to the tent of the Imam. We do not know what the conversation was between these 3 men and Imam Hassan alayhi salam. But as they are leaving the tent of the Imam, we see that they start proclaiming that Hassan has agreed to peace with Muawiyah. Suddenly there is an uproar in the army of the Imam. Instead of waiting to see what the Imam has to say and hear his side of the story, they go into the tent of the Imam and they start attacking him. They rip the carpet from under his feet, they take the robe from over his back. Fortunately, the Imam is able to escape by defending himself with his sword, but as he is escaping, one of the mal'oon stabs him in the thigh using a dagger, which reaches his thigh bone. But the loneliness of Imam Hassan alayhi salam was not just due to his companions. It even penetrated into his household. Shaykh Mufid mentions that when Muawiyah broke all the conditions of the peace treaty and he was ready to appoint Yazid as the next Khalifa, he sent a large sum of money to the wife of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Ja'da. And he promised her that if she were to poison the Imam, then she would be able to marry Yazid. This is a poison that was so painful for the Imam that on his deathbed he is asking for a bowl and he is vomiting his own blood into that bowl and pieces of his liver are coming out. We see just before that occasion, Imam Hussein alayhi salam is entering the room. When he sees the condition of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, he starts crying. Imam Hassan asks him, "Why are you crying?" He says, "I cry because of what they are doing to you." Imam Hassan replies, "Yes, this poison is going to penetrate into my body and I will be killed. ولكن لا يوم كيومك يا أبا عبد الله. But there is no day like your day, O Aba Abdullah. 30,000 men are going to march against you, all claiming to be from the ummah of our grandfather Muhammad. They will be claiming to be followers of the religion of Islam, but they will gather against you, and they will shed your blood, they will violate your sanctity, and they will take your women as captives. We say to you, O Imam Hassan alayhi salam, you faced loneliness because of the betrayal of your companions, but your brothers were with you, your sons were with you. But it is on the day of Ashura that we see that the Imam Hussein alayhi salam is standing there, looking to his right, looking to his left, calling out, هل من ناصر ينصرنا هل من مغيث يغيثنا. Is there any helper to help us? Is there anyone to come to our aid? O Imam Hassan, they looted your tent in the enemy barracks, but your women and children were safe in Medina. On the day of Ashura, it is the women and children that are being looted. It is their robes that are being snatched away. It is their ornaments that are being ripped off them, and they are running from tent to tent away from the burning fire. O Imam, when they looted you, you defended yourself with your sword and you managed to escape. But on that day of Ashura, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam is so ill that he cannot even hold a sword. He is too ill to hold a sword, and how are the women and children supposed to escape when they have been put on saddleless camels moving from Kufa to Sham? وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. ماتم حسين.
حسين يا 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 حسين قاسم کا بابا لوگو دنیا سے جا رہا ہے قاسم کا بابا لوگو دنیا سے جا رہا ہے قاسم کا بابا لوگو دنیا سے جا رہا ہے جبریل بھی حسن پر जिब्रील भी हसन पर आंसू बहा रहा है। कासिम अब लोगो दुनिया से जा रहा है। कासिम का बाबा दुनिया से जा रहा है। पीकर जहर हसन जब नाना के रोज़े पहुँचे, पीकर जहर हसन जब नाना के रोज़े पहुँचे, रोकर कहाँ के नाना बंदा भी आ रहा है। कासिम लोगो दुनिया से जा रहा है। कासिम लोगो दुनिया से जा रहा है। हालत हसन की देखी ख़त्म रसूल ये बोले, हालत हसन की देखी ख़त्म रसूल ये बोले, तुरबत में मेरी बेटा दिल खूब बहा रहा है। कासिम का बाबा लोगो दुनिया, कासिम का बाबा लोगो दुनिया, हद हो गई जुल्म की कासिम तेरे पिदर पर, हद हो गई जुल्म की कासिम तेरे पिदर पर। पहले तो जहर खाया अब तीर खा रहा है। कासिम लोगो दुनिया से जा रहा है। कासिम से जा रहा है। लाशे पे ये हसन की शब्बीर रो के बोले, लाशे पे ये हसन की शब्बीर रो के बोले, भैया ज़रा संभलना वो तीर आ रहा है। कासिम का बाबा लोगो दुनिया से जा रहा है। कासिम दुनिया से जा रहा है। करबल में सब्र करना रो कर हसन ये बोले, करबल में सब्र करना रो कर हसन ये बोले, ये तीर खा के कासिम बाबा बता रहा है। कासिम लोगो दुनिया से जा रहा है। कासिम का बाबा लोगो है। जिब्रील भी हसन पर, जिब्रील भी हसन पर आंसू बहा रहा है। कासिम का बाबा लोगो दुनिया से जा रहा है। कासिम का बाबा लोगो दुनिया से जा रहा है। या हुसैन, या हुसैन, या हुसैन, या हुसैन, या हुसैन, या हुसैन, या हुसैन। सलवात अल्लाह मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद।
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين يا سيد الوصين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى 9 المأسومين من ذريتك علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المنتظر المهدي. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. والسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا.